Normal guy trying to live in the woods and make some money out of being there.
Did Marty Meierotto intentionally steer straight into disaster to bury a secret? Today I'm exposing the uncensored truth behind the mountain men legend's sudden exit from TV and his eerie appearance at a crash scene that set the internet ablaze. Most people think he simply got tired of the spotlight and slipped back into Alaska's wilds. But my investigation reveals a jaw-dropping motive that flips that belief on its head. I've dug through police reports, emergency call logs, and spoken to first responders and Marty's closest friends to piece together hidden clues the public has never seen. Stick around, because in moments I'll break down the real reason for the crash, the missing hours, and how the whole ordeal rewired Marty's life, step by step. Did Marty Meierotto turn his back on a modern world? Or was he running from something? What happened before the cameras rolled might hold the key to everything. Marty didn't start out trying to be famous. He started out just trying to breathe. Growing up in the frozen forests of northern Wisconsin, Marty was the kind of kid who was more comfortable in a pair of boots than sneakers. While other kids were dreaming about summer camp and cartoons, Marty was out chasing wolves, literally. He wasn't scared of the cold. He was drawn to it. His parents, Thomas and Karen, were fur trappers, and the wilderness was just a normal part of family life. School was something he had to do. The woods? That's where he felt alive. By the time he was a teenager, Marty already knew he wasn't going to live a regular life. He didn't want an office. He didn't want a boss. He wanted the land. But here's where it gets interesting. At just 19 years old, he packed up everything he owned into a beat-up truck and drove north with his brother Jeff. Not to college, not to a job, to Alaska. They didn't even plan to stay long, just wanted to trap some fur and make a little money. But when Marty stepped into that icy wilderness and felt the silence around him, he knew. He wasn't going back. The snow, the cold, the emptiness, it didn't scare him. It felt like home. He worked odd jobs to survive. Janitor, logger, construction worker. He did whatever it took just to afford a tent and a trap line. No backup plan, no safety net. Just a young guy chasing a wild dream in a place most people wouldn't last a day. But that's just the beginning. Because the minute Marty chose that life, he unknowingly set in motion everything that would follow. His rise to TV fame, the close calls, the heartbreaks, and eventually, the shocking crash that would pull him off the map entirely. Did Marty survive the wilderness? Or did the wilderness shape him into something else entirely? His next chapter isn't just survival, it's transformation. Marty didn't just live in Alaska. He became Alaska. After settling in the icy terrain, Marty wasn't satisfied with just getting by. He wanted to thrive, and he knew that meant doing things most people wouldn't dare. So he built his first trap line, 200 miles north of Fairbanks, alone. No backup, no cell signal, just raw instincts and a deep respect for nature. He lived out of a one-room cabin he constructed himself, with nothing but a wood stove, a few tools, and the biting wind screaming outside. Temperatures often dropped 40 degrees below zero. For Marty, that wasn't a reason to quit, it was a reason to keep going. But here's the twist. To keep the dream alive, Marty had to juggle brutal labor and brutal weather. He worked construction in the summer and trapped through the winter. If he had a spare dollar, he didn't spend it. He saved it to buy better gear, build more cabins, and expand his trap line. He learned how to track wolverines in the snow and how to melt just enough water to stay hydrated without wasting fuel. His world was all about precision. Every move mattered. Every mistake could mean death. Still, he wasn't trying to prove anything to anyone. Marty just wanted to live the life he loved, even if it meant complete isolation. And it gets even crazier. Most people would have cracked under the weight of that loneliness. But Marty thrived. He started building additional cabins along his route so he wouldn't freeze to death between traps. He memorized every ridge, every stream, every change in snowpack. His knowledge of the land was so detailed, it was like the wilderness became an extension of his own body. Friends back home didn't understand. They thought he was running from something. But the truth was simpler and far more compelling. He was running to something, a place where silence wasn't scary. It was sacred. That devotion laid the foundation for everything to come. including the moment when Hollywood finally came knocking. What if your quiet life, off the grid, suddenly became a national obsession? That's exactly what happened to Marty, and it changed everything. For years, Marty lived in near-complete solitude. Just him, the snow, and the trap lines. No electricity, no phone, no crowds. He liked it that way. But the wilderness has a way of creating legends. And soon, word of Marty's extreme lifestyle made its way to producers at the History Channel. They were searching for someone real, someone raw, someone who didn't just talk about survival, but lived it. When they found Marty, they couldn't believe what they saw. A man who built cabins by hand, hunted his own food, flew his own bush plane, and tracked wolverines solo through sub-zero darkness. It sounded like fiction, but it was all true, and that's when everything changed. In 2012, Mountain Men premiered, and Marty Meierotto became a household name. Viewers were captivated. Week after week, they watched him navigate frozen rivers, repair his snowmobile in blizzards, and fly over treacherous mountain passes to check his traps. Marty didn't fake anything for the cameras. He didn't need to. His life was the story. He wasn't flashy or dramatic. He was steady, sharp, and endlessly resourceful. That authenticity made him a fan favorite. He wasn't playing a character. He was the mountain man. While the other cast members lived their own wild lives, no one matched the sheer grit of Marty's solo expeditions. But here's where it gets interesting. Fame didn't faze him. He didn't move to LA or chase interviews. He stayed right where he was, off the grid, deep in Alaska. The cameras came to him. His focus was still trapping, survival, and his growing family. He welcomed his daughter, Noah Jane, and raised her with the same deep respect for the land. Together with his wife, Dominique, they made their cabin a true home, even if it was frozen half the year. For Marty, the show wasn't about money or attention. It was about showing the world what real wilderness living looked like. But as Mountain Men grew bigger, so did the pressure. And the dangers lurking in Marty's world, they were far more real than any script. Because soon, one mistake would change everything and leave fans wondering if the Mountain Man would ever return. What happens when a man who defies nature comes face to face with its wrath? Marty didn't just have close calls. He had near-death experiences that never made the headlines. It wasn't just the cold or the solitude that tested Marty. It was the danger, the kind most people never live to talk about. During one chilling episode of Mountain Men, Marty faced one of the scariest moments of his life. While flying his small bush plane over the Alaskan wilderness, something went terribly wrong. His Super Cub suddenly nosedived mid-air, nearly crashing in the middle of nowhere. There were no mayday calls, no emergency crews, just Marty and gravity. Somehow, he stabilized the plane and managed to land safely. But there was a catch. He was stranded. No survival gear, no help, and no way out. He was forced to wait out the freezing night in a remote cabin with whatever food and warmth he could scrape together. But that's not all. Even after surviving the crash, Marty had to face the brutal aftermath. Isolation meant he had to rebuild, repair, and replan everything himself. And when he tried to move on from flying, he ran into new problems. His snowmobile, his lifeline in the winter, overheated constantly unless there was a minimum of 4 inches of snow. He literally had to stop mid-ride, scoop up snow with his bare hands, and pack it against the heat exchanger just to keep the machine running. And if that wasn't enough, while hunting goats on Kodiak Island, Marty stumbled across massive bear tracks. Fresh ones, 9 feet long. He froze. Even with a rifle, he knew the danger. One wrong move, and he'd be just another headline in an Alaskan newspaper. And it gets worse. These weren't just dramatic moments for TV. They were real risks that built up year after year. Every season pushed Marty closer to the edge. And every time, he returned barely. Fans loved his courage. But behind the scenes, he started to ask the tough questions. How much longer could he do this? How many more brushes with death would it take before one went too far? The wilderness had made him a legend, but it was also quietly taking its toll. And that toll was about to become impossible to ignore. What happens when the silence of the wilderness is shattered by grief? For Marty, One loss shook him harder than any storm. While fans watched Marty dodge avalanches and track predators on mountain men, few realized that his deepest battles were emotional. One of the hardest blows came in 2017, when his close friend and fellow Mountain Men castmate, Preston Roberts, passed away. Preston wasn't just a character on the show, he was the real deal. A skilled outdoorsman, teacher, and beloved member of the Mountain Men family. His death came suddenly, after doctors discovered an inoperable tumor on his liver. Within days, his body shut down. It was fast, brutal, and completely devastating. But here's where it hits home. Marty didn't just grieve in private. He wrote an emotional tribute to Preston, calling him one of the kindest, most selfless people he had ever known. Marty wasn't someone who opened up easily, but Preston's passing broke through that rugged shell. He donated to a fundraiser that raised over $110,000 in just 5 weeks, helping Preston's family finish the home he had been building before cancer took him away. Marty wasn't just honoring a friend. He was trying to make peace with a reminder he couldn't ignore. Out here, even the strongest don't always survive. And it wasn't just Preston. The more years passed, the more Marty had to face the harsh truth. This life he loved was filled with risk, not just to himself, but to the people he cared about. Close calls with wildlife, blizzards, and mechanical failures were no longer just thrilling stories. They were warnings. And those warnings hit harder when you have a family. His wife Dominique had always supported him, even when others questioned her choice to live off-grid. And their daughter, Noah Jane, was growing up fast, watching, learning, and sometimes even joining Marty on the trap line. But how long could he keep dragging his family into the same dangers he had barely escaped? Now here's the twist. Despite the fame, the fans, and the platform, Marty was starting to feel something unfamiliar. Fear. Not of the wilderness, but of what would happen to the people he loved if one day he didn't make it home. And that fear was about to force a decision no one saw coming. Why would a man built for the wild suddenly walk away from the spotlight? Marty's decision shocked fans, but the real reason runs deeper than anyone knew. After 8 unforgettable seasons on Mountain Men, Marty Meierotto made an announcement that left viewers stunned. He was retiring from the show. No warning, no build-up, just a quiet goodbye that felt like a gut punch to the people who had followed his every move for nearly a decade. Fans begged for answers. Why would someone at the peak of his fame just vanish? Was it health? A falling out with the network? A secret injury? But Marty had only one reason, and it was simple, powerful, and deeply personal. He wanted to be a better dad. Marty's daughter, Noah, was 13 at the time, and while most teens were glued to their phones, Noah was learning to live off the land, just like her father. She helped with the trap lines. She knew how to handle snowmobiles. She was tough, but she was also growing up in front of cameras. And that's what Marty couldn't live with anymore. He said it plainly. He didn't want his daughter's childhood shaped by a television crew. He didn't want her learning to act for the camera or wondering what angle would make the best episode. He wanted her to grow up free. And to Marty, freedom didn't mean fame. It meant privacy, peace, and a life built on love, not likes. But hold that thought, because it connects to something even deeper. Marty wasn't just protecting Noah. He was protecting something in himself, too. The wild had always been his escape, his peace, his therapy. But once the cameras came in, the silence he loved so much started to fade. Even though the producers respected his space, the constant awareness of being watched took its toll. He couldn't trap or build or fly without wondering how it would look on TV. And for someone like Marty, that kind of attention wasn't energizing, it was exhausting. So he made the call. He filmed one last episode where he told the world he was stepping away for good. No dramatic exit, no cliffhanger, just a man choosing his family over fame. He made it clear he wasn't quitting the wilderness. He was quitting the noise. He wanted to keep trapping, keep flying, and keep teaching Noah everything he knew. But he wanted to do it without an audience. And just like that, one of Mountain Men's most beloved figures disappeared from the screen. But what happened next will surprise you. What happens when a man used to living on the edge finally disappears and nobody hears from him? Marty's silence wasn't just retirement. It was a vanishing act. After his final episode aired in 2019, Marty Meierotto didn't just fade quietly into private life. He vanished. No interviews, no social media, no public appearances. For fans used to watching him wrestle wolverines and outweigh 40 below blizzards, the silence was deafening. People started asking questions. Is he okay? Did something happen out there in the snow-covered wild? Was he injured or worse? Rumors flew. A few tabloids even speculated about a bush plane crash. But no proof ever surfaced. Just radio silence from the man who once welcomed millions into his world each week. But here's where it gets interesting. While fans imagined worst-case scenarios, the truth was far simpler and more powerful. Marty didn't disappear by accident. He chose to. He retreated with his wife Dominique and daughter Noah to a small Alaskan town, far from production crews and city noise. He didn't need attention. He didn't want headlines. He wanted what he always wanted: quiet, privacy, time. And that's exactly what he built. Together, the Meierottos returned to their roots, trapping, flying, living off the land. No scripts, no retakes, just real life. But it gets even better. During this time, Marty wasn't just relaxing. He was teaching. He began passing down his entire way of life to Noah. Everything from wilderness tracking to flying a bush plane. And Noah wasn't just watching. She was becoming an adventurer, a survivalist, an Alaskan in her own right. At just 20, she's already developed a reputation among locals for being as fearless and sharp as her father. Marty's legacy wasn't fading. It was evolving. Off camera, on his terms. Still, not everyone respected his decision to disappear. Critics accused him of turning his back on fans. Some even claimed he was hiding something. But those closest to him insist Marty's only crime was doing exactly what he said he would do, putting family first. No scandal, no meltdown, just a man finally stepping away from the noise and choosing a life that was never meant to be televised. And yet, one question still lingers. Why haven't we seen him at all? Because the truth may have even more layers. Could Marty Meierotto be hiding more than just his family? A resurfaced emergency call hints at something darker, something fans were never meant to hear. Years after his TV departure, Marty's name suddenly popped up again, this time buried in an emergency call log. The report? A bush pilot spotted near a crash scene deep in Alaska's interior. The pilot had no official flight plan, no communication logs, and, here's the kicker, matched the description of Marty. Authorities never confirmed it publicly, but word spread fast among locals. Marty had been there. Theories erupted. Was he involved? Was he helping? Was it even him? Most dismissed it as coincidence. But for fans who knew every detail of Marty's plane, his boots, even his gait, it was unmistakable. But hold that thought, because it connects to something even stranger. In that same area, a few weeks later, someone reported hearing a bush plane circling at dusk, right before it vanished below the tree line. No crash was recorded, no pilot identified. Some say it was a rescue. Others whisper that it was a ghost flight. But one detail stood out. The route matched Marty's old trapline trail, the exact stretch of wilderness he once patrolled on mountain men. This wasn't just nostalgia. This was a man retracing his steps. For what reason? No one knows for sure. But those close to him say he's been more reserved, more intense. Something shifted after his exit from TV, and some believe it has nothing to do with family and everything to do with unfinished business. And that's not all. Since then, several locals have claimed to spot Marty out in the brush, setting traps, gathering firewood, even helping a stranded hiker. But he never talks, never explains. Just a wave, a nod, then disappears back into the snow like a ghost. He doesn't want to be followed. He doesn't want to be found. Whatever he's doing out there, it's personal and maybe even painful. Some speculate it's tied to a secret pact with old firefighter friends. Others think he's building something, alone, off-grid, off-record. The man who once lived on camera now lives like he never existed. But that silence? It's speaking louder than ever. What if Marty Meierotto's silence isn't just solitude, but a warning? The deeper you dig, the more chilling the clues become. After years off the grid, something about Marty's retreat began to raise eyebrows, not just among fans, but among people who knew him. Old friends started to notice he wasn't answering messages, even from trusted contacts. Former firefighting colleagues tried reaching out. Nothing. His old bush pilot buddies? Radio silence. It wasn't like Marty to disappear without a trace. He was private, sure, but never cold, never unreachable. That's when whispers started. Maybe Marty didn't just walk away from the spotlight. Maybe he was watching from a distance, waiting to see what the world would do next. But here's the twist. One source, someone who claims to have worked with him during his smokejumper days, said Marty had started building something years ago. Not just a cabin, a kind of safe zone, a buried structure, insulated for the cold, outfitted for long-term survival. Think off-grid bunker meets wilderness retreat. At first, it sounded like a prepper fantasy. But when the source described the location, it aligned perfectly with areas Marty had scouted during Mountain Men. If true, it means Marty wasn't just planning an escape. He was preparing for something. Something he saw coming long before the rest of us. And it gets darker, because around the same time, activists ramped up their attacks on Marty's trapping lifestyle. Animal rights groups called him barbaric, accused him of cruelty. Some even tried to sue the show for promoting inhumane survival. Marty defended himself publicly once, saying his practices were legal, ethical, and rooted in tradition. But after that, he went silent, not just from the media, but from everything. It's as if the attacks, the pressure, and the eyes on his every move pushed him further into the wild. Some believe he couldn't handle the hate. Others think he simply didn't care enough to explain himself anymore. Either way, he vanished with purpose. No phone, no press, no plans to return. But one thing is certain, Marty's silence isn't an accident. It's a message, and it has people wondering, what does he know that we don't? What if Marty Meierotto never wanted fame, but used it to warn us all along? The truth behind his story might be more tragic and more deliberate than anyone realized. When Marty walked away from Mountain Men, most fans thought it was a simple story, a man choosing his daughter over the demands of TV. But now, looking back, it feels like something more, a quiet exit filled with hidden meaning. Marty wasn't just stepping away. He was signing off, like a man who'd told us everything we needed to know, and then disappeared before the noise drowned out the message. His whole career had been about survival, real survival. Not the kind with sponsors and social media applause, but the kind that required grit, instinct, and sacrifice. And for Marty, family was never a side note. It was everything. But here's where it hits hard. In his final Mountain Men episode, there was something in his voice that fans still talk about. A heaviness. A farewell with more weight than anyone realized. He said, if you're lying on your deathbed, you're not going to think about how much money you made or some job you had. You're going to be thinking about what you've done with your life. Those weren't just words. That was Marty telling us why he left. Not because he was done trapping, but because he was done performing. He'd shown us what real resilience looks like. Now, he wanted to live it fully, with his daughter, on his land by his own rules. And that's exactly what he's doing. Today, Marty still lives in a quiet corner of Alaska with Dominique and Noah Jane. No drama, no headlines, just a fire in the stove, snow on the roof, and a lifetime of knowledge being passed to the next generation. Noah is now in her 20s and already carving her own path in the wilderness. She flies, traps, survives, just like her father taught her. The legacy lives on, not on a screen, but in real life. In a way, Marty got what most people never do, the chance to disappear on his terms. Not because he was broken, but because he was finally whole. So if you ever find yourself wondering where Marty went, the answer's simple. He never left. He just went home. And if you think this story was tragic, wait until you see the one that's on your screen right now. That one's truly bizarre.